Uh, Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Nizam.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm very good. How about yourself?
I'm doing good, Deborah. And friends, here is Deborah Coffee. So uh, I'm very happy to introduce her. She's what I can say is used EFT intensively, especially to help a lot of people with trauma. And oh my god, I'm an amazing person, I should say, and my go person as well. So I wanted to uh, have her in this interview series. So Deborah is a registered professional counselor, friends, and the founder of Health Stream Counseling and Wellness, with over 25 years of experience in human services field. She has developed a unique and effective toolbox of resources to help individuals and groups keep moving forward. She currently serves on the Canadian Professional Counselors Association, Alberta Regional Management Team, and has previously served on the board of Momentum Walk-in Counseling. Through her priority in counseling, Deborah's work has included sign language interpreter, special education assistant, job coach, mentor, advocate, trainer, and facilitator. Did you spare anything, Deborah? She enjoys variety and brings her whole heart to each and every client and project. Deborah is also an accredited EFT master trainer, supervisor, mentor, and practitioner. She uses EFT with clients on a variety of issues. She enjoys seeing the results of what happens when you combine traditional talk therapy, EFT, and building the client toolbox. So I'm very happy to have you here. So my first question to you, Deborah, how did you get into EFT?
Yeah, that's fun. I feel like many things in my life I've come through the back door, and EFT is really, I was introduced to it by an older lady that was a friend of mine. Trying to think back in like 2006. It's been quite a while. And at the same time, the massage therapist that I saw got introduced to EFT, and so she introduced me to EFT. So she used it a little bit when she did massage, and it worked really, really well. And then at that time, there wasn't really a lot of training, but there was Gary's website,
Mhm.
which of course I read his original manual, got all of the CDs and DVDs, and that's really how I got started with EFT, just mostly for me, and just because of being introduced to it and then accessing it the only way we could at that time, which was really Gary's website.
Yes, yes, that's awesome. So, out of different modalities, why did you stick to EFT?
And I guess EFT, when I started with it, I was not thinking about it for clients.
Okay.
I was just at that time starting to make a shift from all those other lovely things in my world to more counseling as a whole. And really, I learned it for me because I had my own stuff I wanted to process, and I really liked how it worked, and it works well for me. And over time, because I worked at a walk-in clinic for many years, my clinical director got tired of listening to me talk about the benefits of EFT. So she
Okay.
finally said, start a group
Okay.
using EFT. So I did. I started a group, and we used only EFT in the group. So we didn't do all the traditional things of a group. It was just basically a borrowing benefits group. And it was fabulous. I mean, we saw some amazing things happen. So yeah, and I've probably totally lost track of what your question was. But anyways, it was because of seeing that group and what I saw. It's like, wow, because many of these people were not my clients. They were clients of the agency or clients elsewhere, but they were getting sent to the group. And so they would do their talk stuff. And then they would come in and do EFT in our group. And what we saw was amazing.
Awesome.
Um, and so that made it a go-to tool. And Yeah, because of that clinical director. She basically gave me license to push the envelope all over the place, use it with clients, go become a trainer, go become a supervisor. Okay, okay. So that's really how it became an arsenal in my toolbox with clients. And I'm really grateful to her for that.
Thank you, thank you. So my question was, out of different modalities, why did you stick to EFT? And you gave me like the background how it happened. Awesome.
Yeah, well, but that's why, just because of the results, right?
Yes.
Yeah, just the lovely results that we see.
And what are the various issues you have found EFT to be effective, Deborah?
Um, I just want to really specify here, I'm what they would call a generalist. Like some people, they have a real niche for, they only work on weight management, or they work on this or that. I'm a generalist.
Mm-hmm.
After working 10 years in a walk-in clinic, you get everything and anything. So for
Yes.
me, and in private practice, as well as sort of what I call my day job, working in a medical setting, we see everything. So, I mean, I've used it for pain. I've worked with people that have chronic illness. I've worked with people with terminal illness. As you had said, lots and lots of trauma. So there really isn't much that we haven't touched on in one level or another with EFT. And to how it works and how well it works and how much people are willing to use it, whether just only in session or they decide that, you know what, this is a skill I love and they want to take it home and start using it as a regular tool for themselves. So all of that varies. So we see lots of interesting results and lots of interesting things happen. But yes, original question, what have I used it on? Pretty much anything. It's, if somebody has an issue, we can basically use EFT on it.
It's like the caption goes, try it on everything you have tried everywhere.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, yep.
Good. And Deborah, is it possible to blend EFT with other modalities like CBT or anything like any coaching? Is it possible to blend EFT?
See, this is the thing, is I can't imagine not. And I guess that's because that's become the way that I've worked, because depending on what people are coming in with, I mean, I've worked with some people, they're start the session, it's EFT all the way through, and that's pretty much all we do. They've got EFT, they're working on their personal peace procedure, and I'm that support along the way. But a lot of the people I work with are coming in with a specific issue, and so we may be working on strategies around sleep hygiene while we work with depression. So we are definitely using psych ed stuff. We're building that toolbox. And while we get garbage out of the way with EFT, sometimes we actually need to build in really practical skill, because we might get garbage out, but it may not necessarily teach us communication skill. So sometimes we actually have to do practice around communication skill. Or if we have depression, we need to find what we call vulnerabilities. What causes times that are worse, or what increases things. And so clearing the issues out is wonderful, but sometimes we need some really practical skills to go with that. And so to me, that's how the two blend beautifully. And so I don't think of EFT or talk therapy as separate. I think of them as something you do together.
Amazing, amazing. And okay, yes, we have discussed like how you have helped people with different issues. But when a person is well equipped with using EFT, will it be useful as a self-help tool as well?
Oh, yes. So the ideal client, and this is a thing, right? Your ideal client is the one that comes in, and I call them EFTers for life.
Okay.
They come in and they fall in love with EFT, and it's like, wow, this stuff really works. And they basically start the personal peace procedure. And we have fun with the personal peace procedure, because if somebody's coming in with depression, we'll call it the personal depression procedure. If it's anxiety, the personal anxiety procedure. So we'll have fun with that concept, and as they're working through it. But yes, absolutely, because if a person wants to and is happy to dive in and start using the tapping, that's the ideal, because once whatever piece of work you guys have decided to do is done, they still have a skill to work with. That's the beautiful thing. So now they have a lifelong skill to care for things. and can check in with the practitioner or a therapist whenever they want or need to.
Yes. And Deborah, a lot of therapists also I have seen after working with one client of after another client, again then see back-to-back clients, and somewhere they are drained as well, right? So in such situations, do you suggest therapists use EFT on themselves to release the emotions that they have? It's obvious, natural that they also get triggered at times. So do you
Yeah,
think therapists would be beneficial by applying EFT on themselves?
absolutely. I have the privilege of supervising some therapists within my organization and my professional organization. And the fun thing is we talk about strategies in between clients. Not everybody uses EFT. If I'm using EFT with a client, very often when I'm done with that client, I'm fine. I'm not carrying any residue, because as I'm processing their stuff with them, I get to process my response to their stuff. So I'm often quite even after that session. But often with therapists, we'll talk about, so what do we do if we've had a client and we're feeling really triggered? And, depending on a person's toolbox, because even therapists have a toolbox, they might do breathing exercises or various other things that they can use for grounding. But if that therapist knows EFT, absolutely. Even if that client is just a talk client, you can do 5 minutes of EFT and at least bring a lot of grounding back. So yes, I have done that and will do that at times as needed for myself. Yeah.
Okay. Deborah, I know there is one challenging aspect in the EFT practitioners is like not always a practitioner gets to work face to face.
Right.
Not even online, just over phone. I remember you sharing your experience where no face to face, no online, only through telephone you have to work with the client using EFT. Please share that experience. How on this earth you have managed to do that?
And that, I mean, I'd already had some experience with it, because when you think about the old days and we didn't have a lot of Zoom and stuff, so it was on phone. And some people prefer that. But since COVID-19 started, my day job, so where I work in the medical setting, everything is on phone. We're not bringing any clients in, and we're still not, because there's some doctors using our space right now, so we're not able to. So what is that? March, April, May, June. So we're 3 months now, and I am maybe 25 people a week, and you add the week. So I'm a few hundred calls in now, and a lot of my clients, we do EFT either for a part of the session at least. And we have tackled some pretty big things, even on the phone. With some people, I'm very careful because I want to make sure the resource, but I would be careful if I was in person with them. I would be careful even like video, like we're doing. But yep, we just go ahead and do it anyways. Perhaps the funniest part is if I talk with somebody and I know we have an appointment, I will suggest they go online and do some watching so that they get a sense of where those points are. But sometimes there's no option for that. I get on the phone with somebody and I basically teach them where those points are in 15 seconds.
Okay.
This is what we're going to do. This is where the points are. We're going to start here, and I tell them where the points are. And I tell them while we're doing that part of EFT where it's back and forth, I will say like, okay, inner eyebrow, and whatever the next statement is, outside of the eyebrow, next statement. And I just tell them they don't have to say things like inner eyebrow, outside of the eyebrow, but just so they know where we're tapping. And it has worked. So yep, so some people get a 15-second fast lesson of here's the points, let's go. And we do. And then of course, by the time we have our next session, they have time to maybe watch some videos or get a template of where those points are. So they'll be much more comfortable with them, or can even send them to a website to read about the history of EFT. But
Okay.
yeah, that's some of the interesting things we've seen in the last few months, but
Yes.
we're having nice results anyway. So
That's awesome. And Deborah, you have trained nurses in
yes.
EFT. So how receptive are people from medical background to apply EFT in their regular practice?
And that's a good question, because the majority of people that I have trained are, like you say, nurses, a few massage therapists, mostly therapists. Mostly it's all therapists doing typical talk therapy in a variety of settings. And once they learn EFT, and I mean, they're coming in because they like EFT or they've heard about it, or their boss sometimes says, hey, we're going to train the whole agency, so you better come. Oh, okay. And mostly it's a really positive response. Once people have tried it and use it, they really like it because it's so easy and so adaptable. A really good example to me is a marriage therapist that came and has done all 3 levels of EFT and is trained in EMDR. Her preference is, like, she definitely does main talk therapy with couples, but she uses EFT as part of it. And she finds it far faster and far more accessible than doing EMDR with couples. So yeah, people are sometimes, once they learn it and they feel really comfortable with it, are very quick to embrace it and put it into their practice.
And yes, like therapists also, mainly you supervise, not only train, and you supervise therapists. How, after getting trained and they are taking supervision from you regularly, did that their therapeutic skills and the client's results improved after adding EFT to their toolbox?
Good question. And I have to be really clear here. So I do some supervision with therapists through our professional association, because we have a process where when you first come into the organization, to the professional organization, you come in as what we call as a candidate, and you have to have a primary supervisor. So in that category of people that I do supervision for, it's not necessarily EFT.
Yeah.
Some of those people, once they know I do EFT, they're totally on board and want to learn. And then part of that supervision might include stuff around EFT. But does people's work improve? Yeah. One example I can think of, and she's not even somebody I supervise, which is really interesting, but I guess I better change that. I don't have a direct supervision, but I do a lot of EFT mentoring with her.
Mm-hmm.
She runs a trauma center for refugees.
Oh, okay.
And it is amazing. She says the night and day difference in the work, because people that are traumatized that come in that can't even give words to what they've experienced. And so much of it's feeling and in the body. And so she'll often use just simple tapping with them and start to help them get language around that trauma. And she says what she sees is amazing. So yeah, so does working with somebody and getting that extra mentoring and supervision make a difference? Because this is one of the things that I have found is I can take a workshop, EFT or whatever, but often unless I have a source to go to for extra support, it's very hard to really develop that skill deep and wide. So supervision or mentoring or peer supervision, whatever you want to call it, to be able to deepen that skill is so important. But what happens when you get to do that is amazing. Like I say, the work that this one clinician has done blows me out of the water. Yeah.
Amazing. So you are not only using, but you are also helping people to use EFT in different fields. That's amazing, Deborah. And Deborah, you are you work with people who have undergone a lot of trauma, abuse, and as you are a trauma specialist, what is the role of EFT while helping your clients?
Okay, well, first off, let's just say I don't call myself a trauma specialist. I don't call myself any kind of a specialist. I'm a generalist. And I say I'm a generalist because I work with all kinds of things, but you're right.
Yes.
Trauma is to me, trauma is so much a part of a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter whether you consider it trauma or I consider it trauma. It's how it's experienced by that person in their emotions, in their body, in their nervous system. And so while working with it, trauma, EFT for trauma is amazing because it keeps the body and the brain calm. And when we can keep the brain and the body calm, it's kind of like walking through a house. Suddenly, if everything's calm in the house, you can walk into a room, you can look at the room, you can decide what to do in that room. You may not do a lot. You may put one thing over, move one thing out, change things around, but you can walk out of that and feel really, really safe when you leave. And I think that's what I love about EFT for trauma. And every time you get to walk back into that room, however we do it, gentle techniques, direct, exposure, not exposure. There's so many different ways to do it. But the point is, every time you go in and you make a shift, it changes everything. And you walk back out and you can feel safe in doing it. And so that's what I love about EFT for trauma.
So again, did you work with children applying EFT?
Not really young kids, no.
Okay.
I've trained a few people that are doing that, which is kind of interesting because they're giving me lessons on how to do it, which is really fun, right? Because it's not my specialty. I tend to work with mature minors and then old people, that are 18 and over. Older people, 18 and over.
We can say.
Well, what I've seen, even using EFT for teenagers, it works really well. There are some people that it doesn't matter no matter what. Even if you do EFT with them, even if they notice that they're improving, it's like, I don't like this. I'm not going to do it again. Okay, no problem. And then we go back to traditional talk therapy. But basically what I have found working with mature minors, so that's kind of your 12 to 18 or your 14 to 18 group, they respond just as well to EFT as, say, that 18 and above. And I will shift wording. And I will even shift tone of voice depending on age, experience, and what's going on, right? So, I mean, and I do that if we're doing sort of parts work or inner child work too.
Amazing, amazing. And Deborah, I have heard that people are like special educators are also imbibing EFT to work with special children. So how is EFT helping them in such situations?
That I think what's really helpful, and again, this is more not because I've done a lot of this work, but I have a couple of therapists that have been trained. And what's interesting, they do work with kids with special needs. And I know that there's some EFT practitioners, that's where they specialize. But one woman in particular, like she has worked with autistic kids that don't necessarily have a lot of language. And the really beautiful thing about EFT is you can work, like when you think about, sometimes we call it basic tapping, simple tapping, whatever word you want to use, we don't necessarily need a lot. And a term that I use with clients is called treadmill tapping. Sometimes it's just where we tap. We don't necessarily have to have all the big words or all the fancy stuff, because sometimes we're just feeling. And so feeling, if we tap, our body, once it gets used to it, knows to just slow it down, bring it down, and it will process things. And sometimes for kids, especially a child with special needs, it isn't necessarily about all the talking. It's just about the connecting, and it's about letting the body calm, letting the mind calm. And that makes such a difference. I say one therapist, she did it with her autistic nephew one time, and he really calmed down. And about 3 or 4 weeks later, they had a family member pass away. And as soon as this young man saw his aunt, he just looked at her and said, "Can we do EFT?" So it's interesting. They only did it once, and he really responded to it. He knew what happened for him. So he was very distressed about the death of this relative. And when he saw his aunt, all he wanted to do was that EFT because he knew it would help him feel better. So it's stories like that that make me go, wow.
Amazing. And let's shift from humans to animals. Some people do EFT for animals as well. So any of your experience or your students?
Yeah, I can only tell you about 2 people I know of. Of course, we talk about it, right? And there's some videos out there about it, and I'm definitely not an expert because, my cat would have just rather, scratched me and walked away. But that original massage therapist that introduced me to EFT, she was like a horse whisperer. And she used EFT for horses, which was pretty amazing. And it doesn't surprise me because Lori was pretty amazing when it came to that kind of stuff. So the fact that she would use it on horses and it would have such a positive effect does not surprise me. And recently in teaching EFT level 1, one of the students said she had a really anxious dog and she just got tired of this dog barking all the time. And so she started doing a little bit of EFT on the side of the neck of her dog. And every time she'd start, the dog would just go kerplunk and just totally calm down. So she said she taught it to her husband and said, "Look, when that dog gets barking and anxious, this is what you do." And now they're doing it with their dog. So that's all my experience about using it for animals. But clearly some people are using it with amazing success. So yeah.
That's amazing. Like, EFT is you being used in clinical setup. EFT is being used as a self-help tool, clear like coaching,
Yeah.
therapy. Like it is spreading across. Awesome. And one more field is sports. Sports people using
Yeah.
EFT. Could you please share
Yeah.
something about does EFT help or is it really helping sports people?
Well, there's a couple of specialists in that, and I laugh because the first thing that happened, remember my clinical director that pushed me into stop talking
Mhm.
about it, go start a group. Oh, okay. Um, she doesn't use EFT, which I find very funny, but she's always pushing other people to learn it and use it. But her husband golfs and loves golf, and he was struggling with something. So he ended up using some EFT, and his golf game, whatever the issue was, improved. And she actually told me about it, which I found really funny. And then somebody that's just trained in EFT, she actually used to be a skater and now she's a psychologist. And so her really big goal is to use it around sports and to help people with sports performance. So it is definitely being used. I mean, we see stories and we hear stories, and that makes the news when we hear that a sports person has used it. But those are sort of the only two experiences where I can tell you directly.
Yeah.
And the fact that this one person, this psychologist, has just learned it. Yeah. And I think is it Stacy Vornbrock? I could have the name wrong, and I apologize if I do. I think that's one of her specialties, is using it around sports performance. So, and she's got stuff on her website and what have you in doing that. But so definitely there are people doing it. And what was interesting is one of our, not in Edmonton, but in Vancouver, one of the teams had somebody that used EFT working with the team. So they were actually using it. So yeah, you definitely hear stories, and you know that it is being used in a bigger way than ever before around sports performance.
And isn't this EFT tapping bit weird?
Absolutely. And I tell that to people, and I always tease them. I says, but usually if we're together in person, it doesn't matter because we'll look weird together, and that's okay, right? I use a lot of humor in my work, and it's a way of helping just break through trauma. And I like humor anyways, and it is weird, but that's what I tell them. After you get used to it for a while, right? Who cares? It doesn't feel weird anymore. It feels normal.
Okay.
And we have our way of using it. If you're in a crowd and you need to do some tapping, or we do say if you're on a bus, definitely do this because this will keep everybody away from you. But there's the old finger tapping if you're got a job interview underneath the table. Nobody cares. Or just some people really like just doing this, using that collarbone, because again, most people won't care. So there are ways to do it if you're in a crowd. But yes, it definitely looks funny and it definitely feels weird at first, but it has such nice results.
Yes. And Deborah, could you please share one or two of your memorable case studies out of so many cases you deal on a day-to-day basis?
Trying to think, because yeah.
Yes.
Do you have anything in particular? Because of course, and I also have to be careful because of course of all the confidentiality stuff, right, with
Yes,
people.
yes. Anything which you are comfortable sharing,
Yeah.
non-clinical thing.
Okay. So I guess one issue that's really fun is somebody that had sort of didn't realize they had an issue around abandonment. And one of the things I love about EFT is that sometimes it's not about everything that clears, it's about the aha moment that happens.
Yes.
Is because with this person, as a few sessions went on, and you could just see this look, what? And the realization that, wow, one of the sort of core issues that this person has dealt with their whole life is that fear of abandonment. Her mom had died when she was in her teens. For a while, as a young person, she'd had to live with some other relatives. So there was this whole history. So she'd begun to develop this waiting for people to just leave for whatever reason. But once she got that aha moment, every relationship in her world changed, because all of a sudden, instead of looking at relationships with that as sort of that background message, what now that in the foreground, It totally changed how she interacted with everybody. And I mean, it was really interesting to hear her response to that after. So it's kind of cool. That's one of the experiences I love, because just even when we saw that happen, right? And she said, oh my, it was interesting. It's just so wonderful to see people's face when there's this absolute light up.
Yes, yes.
And maybe it's the interesting thing, another one is just where a mom had something serious happen with a child.
Mm-hmm.
And just the trauma and guilt she was going through about what had happened to her child, and being able to work with her through that situation, all of the emotions, all of them, you know, the memories that were kind of burned in her face about seeing the fear in her child's eyes and stuff like that, and seeing after maybe 4 sessions, maybe 4, that completely turned around. And like she says, I'm done. And she knew she was done. And the beautiful thing is, like, the fact that she says, but what she really appreciated is that she had a skill that she could use. And she says, you know, I've been telling everybody about this. So she says, you not only helped me, but now there's a whole lot of people doing EFT as a self-help skill. So that was really cool.
That's awesome. And do you feel a mother trained in EFT can make difference in her family?
That's a good thought. I mean, yes, I do. I think anybody, well, yes, because I'm a mother and I've used EFT with my kids. Now my kids are not little anymore, but I have used EFT, and I've seen some tiny little results. My family may not embrace EFT as much as I do, but
Yes.
it's been nice to see even the little results that we've had.
Yeah.
When they're willing to do it. It's all right, mom, whatever. So it's been kind of cool. But yeah, it is, and it would make a difference. Many of the young therapists that have learned EFT, they're also moms. And so some of them, the kids will do it. Some of them, the kids won't, but they're finding it really helpful. What's really cool is that some of the therapists that are learning actually work in the school system, and they're very excited to start using it with the kids, and hopefully even with some of the teachers. So
That's awesome, because I see, like, parents are also frustrated with kids, and they don't want to transfer their emotions to their kids. And also, like, vice versa, like, children, if they start practicing EFT, they are more calmer. So obvious, logically, it also makes sense that a family would definitely get benefited. Their mother, or like parents or kids, all are tapping.
yeah, and I think there's a couple of books out now for, I think, tapping for teenagers, tapping for children, tapping for families, whatever. Like there's a few different books out by different authors. I admit, haven't read them all. I just, you see these titles come up, and some of them are in the back of my mind. I'm going to read that, or at least refer clients to it if it's something that's of interest to them.
Yes. And Deborah, I ask this in every interview, like, coaches have coaches, therapists have therapists. So how open are you to take sessions from others, and do you take sessions?
I have done swap sessions with people just because it's a great way for me to learn. And I always tell people, if you're the client and we're doing a swap session and you like something I do, steal it. Because if I like something you do, I'm totally going to steal it. And I'm totally okay with that. And a few years back, I took a course, and there was another practitioner, another therapist in there. And part of the homework was they suggested that you tag team with people and do swap sessions during this course. So I did. And one of the therapists that we started doing these swaps with, we got on like a house in fire in how we do the work and stuff. And she's still my therapist, basically. So I still work with her on a fairly regular basis. So I do my own stuff, my own tapping. And yeah, she's my we still say swap partner, but really, we just, every time we get together, it's she's client, next time I'm client, and it just goes back and forth, and it's been awesome. I mean, I have done some beautiful work as her client. So
okay, so that's how, like, what happens is, a lot of people, especially in the mental health field, they are also worn out at times of continuous work and their own mental health is also at stake. So that's the reason I was asking. So
Oh yeah.
how it helps.
Yeah, and I tease that I am sometimes a therapist because I have worked, because I've supervised therapists, because I train. Sometimes it ends up meaning that on the side of that, now when there's a supervisor-supervisee relationship, especially within the counseling field, that's very specific. But sometimes I end up with some of those as clients, or they refer other therapists over. So I've done a lot of work with therapists as clients. And actually, I love that work, because I don't need to teach them anything about being a therapist. And we're not working on what they do in therapy. We're just working on being a human being. And maybe that's what's so important about me having the person or persons that I use when I have something come up, is that I like to think I'm a good therapist. But when I am the client, I'm not a great therapist for myself because I'm too emotionally involved. To me, the perfect example is a few years ago, I got hit twice, like 1 week apart. And no, neither of these car accidents were my fault. And I just got to be really clear about that, because I ended up in this 2 weeks apart, middle of winter, not very fun, living in Edmonton. And so I realized I was getting a startle response after this in driving. And I knew I needed to get this processed as fast as possible. So I was able to do 4 sessions over 4 weeks, 1 a week. And within that 4 weeks, very quickly, we brought that whole intensity down.
Wow.
But at the same time, that led to sort of all those little side issues around, an accident I'd had when I was a kid, right? And yes, that one was my fault. And so that feeling of guilt, well, it's your fault. Well, so just dealing with some of that extra baggage that you don't even know you still carry. So
Yes.
that was a really good thing, and only in 4 sessions, but I knew to do it fast, and I knew I couldn't do my own work around that. Some, yes, but I needed that other person to kind of lead.
Excellent. Thank you, Deborah, for patiently answering all these questions. And I'm sure a lot of people might have got good takeaways, friends. And one last question, Deborah, before we leave. What are the good books that people who are interested to know more about EFT they can read, so that
And that's going to depend on whether it's a person just wanting to learn about
just
EFT.
beginning, just beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not for already EFT practitioner, just who
Right.
is just beginning or curious to know more about EFT. Any suggestion?
You know what? My first suggestion would be to just go on to Google then and literally put in free EFT manual.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a number of sites, right? Whether EFT and Mindfulness or EFT Universe or AMED or ACEP. And most of them all have a free EFT manual, and some
Okay.
others have developed them too. And you can still access Gary Craig's original one. So if you really want to learn the basics, that's the way to go. There's definitely books out there, but some of them get into more specifics about how to be your best self or how to EFT in children. So any of them would work. But yeah, so I suggest just doing it that way, because then you get to sort of play with EFT.
I think that's a very good suggestion.
Yeah, no, that's and that's often what I'll tell clients. Like, if you want to get to know more, here's a really good way to do it, and I'll refer them to some of those sites that I just mentioned.
Okay, thank you very much, Deborah, once again, and it's been really pleasure to have you interviewed, and thanks for answering all the questions very patiently. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for interviewing me, Nazam. That was fun.
Yeah, thank you.